Your education is supposed to be the great equalizer. It's supposed to level the playing field where you may be at a disadvantage. However, in America today, with the changing climate and view on the importance of public education through our federal government, in America, students with special needs and disabilities are once again having to fight uphill to be seen and valued. According to my friends over at the PBS NewsHour, they report 70% of all schools in America last year reported that they were experiencing special education teacher vacancies, and furthermore, those that choose this as a profession don't stay in the field any longer than 5 years. Because you see, it's the U.S. government's job through the Department of Education to flow money to the state school districts, who are then responsible for giving the money to their local schools in their community. And with such uncertainty, teachers in the field of special education don't see the value in sticking it out and waiting for certainty. However, now with limited guardrails in today's education system for governments to prove the need for these special education programs, it's the students who are most directly affected, and my friends, no one knows that better than my friend Diana Fannon. Dr. Fannon is an educator, an advocate, and a parent with over 23 years of experience in the field of special education. As a bilingual school psychologist and special education director, Fannon's attended thousands of IEP meetings, and she's guided countless families through the complexities of the special education system. Dr. Fannon is on a mission to revolutionize the field of special education. Her journey in this field is particularly both personally and professionally meaningful. She was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 17 and is now raising a child with autism. She understands the difficulties firsthand on how parents may struggle to get the appropriate support for their student and child with special needs. That's why, through her platform, DisabilityEdPros, Dr. Fannon aims to equip parents with the knowledge, tools, and resources to navigate the special education system with success by limiting legal processes and advocating effectively for their children. She's got a passion for inclusion for all students of all abilities. She's committed to bridging the gap between families and the school system to ensure that all students have an equal shot at the education and resources they need to thrive both inside and outside of the classroom. And Fannon joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn about your personal and professional experience in special education. It's great to see you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So, Diana, before we dive into your over 20 years of experience, earlier this year, our friends over at the PBS NewsHour reported that 70% of school districts across America are experiencing job vacancies for special education teachers. And they also reported that special education teachers aren't staying in the profession longer than 5 years, my friend. And I wonder, when I give you those statistics, my friend, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
That is accurate. It is. It is a hard field right now. I think it always has been, but it has been, I would say, more challenging of late. I think COVID in particular made it a little more difficult to provide services and just to do all of the work that goes along with being a special education teacher. And I think it's going to just continue to get a little more challenging with the current state of affairs. And so, excuse me. And so I think we at school districts continue to try to be as creative as possible in finding ways to fill vacancies and to provide services to the students who are some of the highest needs and are most vulnerable and traditionally underserved populations.
Yeah, absolutely. My friend, was a change in administration over in the States and their view on public education. I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the current state of special education for students with disabilities, and how you would currently describe the state of affairs when it comes to special education for students with disabilities, my friend.
How I would describe it, it is, we've made a lot of progress. I think right now, currently, we're kind of at a precarious time, just given everything that's going on with some of the threats to diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, and I think we're all a little bit worried, but we're very much at a wait and see. But we also see a lot of threats to it across the state. We see a lot of initiatives being rolled back. We have seen Office of Civil Rights, or OCR, offices that have been closed already. We've lost 7 of those across the country. And with some of the things being moved to the Health and Human Services Department, and some of the funding, we saw that the funding wasn't changed, but it hasn't been specified how it's being rolled out. And it's scary because IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it has never been fully funded. The funding was always promised to be 40%. We've never gotten above, I think it's 14%. So we've always struggled. And when I say we, I mean our school districts, our students, families, everyone has always struggled to get kind of as much as the students need. So I think we are very much at a wait and see, but we are under-resourced, and we're looking at an opportunity gap that widens, service qualities that may be reduced, and just generally inequities that will continue to be exacerbated. So that's, hopeful but scared, maybe is the way to say it in a shorter way.
That's the long and short of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And my friend, I know that you have more than 23 years of experience as a special educator, an advocate, and a parent, with your own sort of a relationship to this issue, my friend. I know you're raising a son with autism, and you've been diagnosed with epilepsy, my friend. And I'm curious to get your personal take on why this work is personally important to you, my friend.
So it was personally important to me before I even realized it was personally important, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
I didn't even necessarily know to call myself a person with a disability before. When I had epilepsy, it was so long ago before we had a lot of information available. And I think as I started working with students with disabilities, I went through my own sort of evolution and understanding my own disability. And so it just, my work and my own disability kind of evolved at the same time. And then I found my voice to advocate for other people with disabilities, and we kind of worked through it together. They didn't know it, but it was all happening at the same time. So through my 20 plus years of work, that's what happened. And then almost 4 years ago, my son was born, and he was diagnosed with autism and he had some delays and then was diagnosed with autism. And by that point, before he ever came into the picture, I was already so passionate, and this work was already so important to me that he came around at the perfect time when, he just fit nicely into that. And I was happy to have him however he showed up, right? Whether he'd had a disability or not. But he's just a perfect little person the way he is. And I happen to know how to advocate for him and how to work through some of the systems, I should say. They're fairly complicated, even for someone like me. So it's personally important because I've worked with so many families and I've seen their struggles, and now I get to take all of that knowledge and use it for my own son.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Diana, I know you've also attended thousands of IEP meetings over the course of your career, and being born with cerebral palsy myself, my friend, I've attended enough of them to know that individual education plans have certainly changed over the years, my friend. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how the quality of individual education plans have changed and the importance of the parent-teacher relationship in that regard. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So I think it's maybe the most important relationship. And I think so. I think the relationship between the parent and teacher is incredibly important, particularly the younger the child is. And it also depends on the student and the student's needs, right? I think the more the child's able to communicate, the better for the parent, right? Because the parent is the child's voice. That's sort of the way I've always looked at it. And so the parent has to have that relationship with the teacher, and they've got to be working side by side to be able to really figure out what is in the best interest of the child, what is in the best interest of their academic, social, emotional, behavioral, like how are they all working together? And then the teacher needs to hear from the parent about what's going on at home, because sometimes a child will have a good day at school and not a good day at home. And sometimes they'll have a good day at home, but a bad day at school, right? And so you get to see things that don't always happen in one place, but hear about them. And so without that communication, you don't really get a full picture of the child, because everyone's an expert in their own way, but you've got to be able to communicate and share that information in order to get a complete IEP, right? In order to get that full individualized education plan. And so the parent and teacher have to be communicating about that. And then you can speak to this a little bit maybe, but as the child gets older and as the student gets older, I think it's really important to have the student involved in the IEP as well, for a little bit or for a longer time, so that they can speak to what they want and what is important in their educational plan. So I don't know, were you involved in your own IEPs?
Yeah, especially when I got older, because I wanted to shape sort of my own future. And, I talk to businesses about the importance of hiring people with disabilities. And I'm actually serving this year as the chair of the Family Advisory Council for my local children's treatment center back home. And one of the things I've advocated for is what the center is calling the transition to adulthood program. So our local children's treatment center have hired more social workers to help families in the transition and trying to get more employment opportunities for folks as they age out of the pediatric care system, because I tell the government all the time that the disability doesn't stop at 21, right? So,
Exactly right.
yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I know that you're passionate about finding equity and fairness in education today so that all students of special education and disabilities have a chance to have equal learning outcomes, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you define equity and fairness in today's educational system, my friend?
Oh, so that's always something that, we struggle with, or it's a struggle sometimes because everyone has a different definition of it. And so I think when we talk about equity, we're talking about giving every student what they need. And when we talk about fairness, we look at removing barriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's putting, and sometimes that can be for students with disabilities or for any individual with disabilities, actually, because that's where we talk about things like ADA and things in life. We talk about you're in Canada, so maybe not, but Americans with Disabilities Act when it comes to, but it's putting things like accommodations in place. So in order to be fair, we make something accessible. We put a ramp up. We do things like that in order to make sure someone who's in a wheelchair can access something. We make sure there's elevator access. We do whatever we can to make sure that it is fair and accessible. But when we talk about equity, it might be that if someone can't see a writing on the wall, they might need glasses, but not everyone will need glasses, right? So equity doesn't mean that everyone needs exactly the same. It means they get what they need. And I think that's a really important distinction that we try to make sure that everyone needs. So we have to dismantle those barriers and make sure we're enabling full participation for everyone.
Yeah, and my friend, I know that you've been recognized for your ability to lead and mentor during these challenging times, and you're committed to sort of mentoring the next generation of leaders through a strength-based sort of model while fostering both personal and professional growth, my friend, in the context of educational practices, law, and policies. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this work and why it continues to sort of ignite your fire, and how do you think it's evolved today? What are your thoughts there?
So one of the things that I really like to do is to find what somebody is good at, to identify their natural strengths, and then empower them to lead with by being who they authentically are. So really identifying that, and then helping to apply real world educational law or equity or policy shifts, and then really figure out how to help them apply that. And then it also continues to evolve as I find leaders who reflect the diversity of our schools and the diversity of our world, and looking for people who are different race, different culture, different, who have disabilities, right? We want to really make sure that we're reflecting what our world looks like and what our schools look like, because our systems call for more inclusive and more culturally responsive leadership.
Yeah, and one of the creeds that I live my life by is that I believe that talent is an equally distributable commodity, but sometimes access to opportunity is not, my friend. So under that context, I'm wondering your true definition of educational inclusion and how we can set up a pathway for future success as children get older. So what's your definition of educational inclusion, my friend?
So I think there are a few components to true educational inclusion. There is belonging, and then we talk about rightful presence, the idea that every student has a right to be there. You don't have to earn it. It is your right. And then along with that, we talk about presumed competence. So we presume that every child has the ability. And so simply because we talk about this in particular with students who have different ways of communicating, right? A student who uses a device or technology to communicate, simply because a child isn't using words doesn't mean they can't communicate with us. There's a different way of communicating. So I think it's making sure and educating everyone that truly including doesn't mean everything has to look the same. It means everyone has to be and gets to be part of it. So there is belonging, there is access, there is participation, and we presume competence, and there is a right to their presence. They have rightful presence.
Yeah, and my friend, I want to talk about your platform that you've created called DisabilityEdPros, my friend, where you look to equip parents with the knowledge and confidence and the tools that they need to navigate the special education system while helping to demystify the legal processes and advocacy effectively, my friend. So tell me about DisabilityEdPros and how it works, my friend.
So the idea with DisabilityEdPros is that I want to work with parents so that I bridge the gap between the families and the systems. There's a lot of bureaucracy sometimes as parents are trying to help learn about special education and IEPs. There's so many acronyms. And there's so many, sometimes there's lawyers, sometimes there's just all kinds of things that happen, and it feels like parents and families may be at a disadvantage. And so I want to help provide plain language explanations, step-by-step guidance, and coaching that's empathetic and strategic, so I can understand because I'm there, and I also know the system from the inside out. So I want to help empower, help translate law into everyday language, and then give real-time actionable support and strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think it means to empower parents to advocate for their own children? What do you think empowerment and a sense of empowerment means in that regard, my friend?
So I think it means that to empower parents, I think it means that we help them understand, we help them feel not alone, we help them give them knowledge. I think when parents feel, at least I can say that when I've been in places where I don't really understand everything, I feel alone, right? I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And so I think the more we can give knowledge, the more we can give skills, the more we can give. Sometimes it's even just a roadmap. So knowing who to call, right? Knowing who to reach out to, knowing how to get access to the next thing, the next step. Even that makes, I think, parents feel like it's not so
Cumbersome, yeah.
Yes, cumbersome, right? It just makes it feel more doable, more manageable. So whatever, or breaking a task down into manageable steps, right?
Absolutely. You know, Diane, I'm also curious to ask you about the conversations that you're having with special needs parents about their emotional, mental, and psychological journey raising a child with special needs, you know, because going through that process myself, I know that it takes a village to raise a child with special needs sometimes. I'm wondering the types of conversations that you're having with parents about the social, emotional, and psychological needs about raising children with special needs today. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So I'd say there's three overwhelming feelings that I hear most frequently. Depending on where parents are in their journey, you hear a lot of grief. There's a lot of parents who had who just weren't prepared, I think. And so there is still a grieving process toward what they were expecting and what they thought parenting would be. And it's just a different journey than they were expecting. And then I think there's also a lot of guilt. Sometimes parents feel like they're not doing enough or they missed something along the way. they thought they were doing everything, and then they find out they missed something. And I missed this one thing 5 years ago, and so now my child didn't get all the services they need. They didn't get everything they were supposed to get. And then sometimes there's isolation. If they don't have a community of parents who are going through what they're going through, they feel very alone in their journey. And so those are, I think, the three most common emotions.
Yeah, you brought up social isolation for parents, but I know for myself going through life living with a disability, sometimes, social opportunities aren't readily available. And, the University of Michigan just came out with a study that said that 40% of people with disabilities live in some sort of social isolation throughout the course of their lives, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about how do you think we can create more social opportunities so that people with disabilities or children with disabilities can create sort of what I call the social capital so that they don't feel so isolated. What are your thoughts there?
So I think I think it's both. I think you're correct. And I think it's also something that is always a big miss a lot of the times in schools. We talk a lot about inclusion, how when we create inclusive opportunities for students, that is one of the biggest wins. If Because the academics can be picked up, but what happens when we're in opportunities with both neurotypical and neurodiverse peers, that we create social connection, right? That we create those. And I think it's so important, like you said, because of what you just said also, which is creating that community. And I love the term social capital. I think it's super important. So how can we do it? How can we do a better job? I think the more inclusive opportunities we offer, the more likely it is to happen. However, they need to be structured, I think, sometimes too. The younger the kids are, the more structured they think they need to be. And so we need to support those opportunities in schools. We can do them through clubs, we can do them through classes. But I also think that there are a ton of opportunities through some of our various clubs that we have in existence now, things that are outside of school that we can provide for both adults and kids. And I think we can also do them online. I know a lot of people who are connecting virtually. And I know it's not quite the same, but I think any connection is a good connection. And I think anything that allows adults and kids, teens, to be connected, to not be living a life of isolation, I think provides some relief. And I think the more instruction we can give in using social skills to be able to connect is a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my friend, I'm also curious to get your message to parents who may feel like they're climbing the mountain of overwhelm, because when you have a kid with special needs, my friend, you get a lot of information coming at you a lot faster than sometimes you're able to absorb it. So I'm wondering your message to parents about how to sort of navigate the emotional feeling of I'm getting all of this information. How do I sort of process this to make sure that my kid has the best chance at an equitable future? So what's your message to parents, my friend?
Well, my message is that you're doing enough, even if you don't think you are, because you can only do so much, and you have to do the most. You can only do the most that you can, I guess, is what I want to say. Like, you are a person, your child is resilient. Do as much as you can, but also just remember that every day is another day, right? So I think that you can't burn yourself out or doing like. I should be more eloquent than this. Let me try this again. So I think that during my journey, I've had to take breaks in focusing on things at different times. So I had to focus on early intervention for a period of time for my child, and then he got into school, and I had to focus on his school services. And he had some services outside of school, but not all the services, right? So we some things had to give, because I was only one person. And so I have seen progress. Could I have seen more progress? I don't know. But I had to at some point say, I can't do any more than I've been doing. And 6 months from now, I will focus on the next battle that I have to fight. So I guess that is, we can only do so much, and we have to give ourselves grace, because we also have to love our kids, live our lives, and have fun with them too.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, the best analogy that came into my head was don't burn the candle at both ends all the time, right?
That's right, because you have to have enough left to give to your kid too, right? Beyond just advocating for them.
And yourself, right?
Exactly. That
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and Diane, I'm also curious to ask you, because I know that you're a bilingual school psychologist too, my friend. And over the course of your career, I'm wondering, for you, have you seen that as a competitive advantage for yourself in terms of your ability to help other people who don't necessarily speak English as their first language? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it was a big part of my job for a long time, and it still is sometimes. But when I first started out working as a school psychologist, I did a lot of assessments in Spanish, did a lot of work with families, and as a teacher a little bit too, honestly, a lot of work with families who spoke Spanish, and and I think it's helpful sometimes too in just making families feel more comfortable, because it can be I think schools can be scary. I think some families, and I don't blame them. I think sometimes schools just feel overwhelming. There's a lot of people on one side of the table who all work for the school, and then as a family, if you add to it that English is your second language, I think it can be helpful and a little more comforting to have somebody who speaks Spanish with you. And I'm not a native speaker, but I speak it, well enough to be able to really communicate with the families and assess their kids in Spanish. And so I think it was definitely an asset and definitely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Diana, as you continue to have conversations with school administrators, principals, and the like, I'm wondering your message to them or what you're trying to advocate now as we try to navigate this new landscape for students with special education needs or disabilities. So, what sort of conversations are you having with administrators specifically? What are your thoughts there?
So I think that, our concerns and their concerns, I think we all have similar concerns, but we do have to continue. I try to work with them, and I try to talk to them about whether they're in my district or outside of my district, wherever we're talking, is just kind of a focus on the student first, right? Like, we are all worried, we're all concerned about everything going on. We are having a lot of, staff is tired and burnt out, and it's a hard time right now, but there are ways to do things like include students in sort of practical ways that are less taxing on teachers and staff, but still support all of our students, right? They give them opportunities to be included and to be around their peers. And it is just an opportunity for staff and everyone to really focus on what it means to give our neurodivergent students opportunities to be included and around neurotypical peers.
Yeah, and
Sorry, go
go,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought there.
And I was just going to say the other one is that, like, we really, I think one of the things that I want to always try to do is our administrators and our teachers, everyone is just, they're all working so hard, and it's just, there's so much going on right now, and everyone's trying to do what is the best for students. So it's really about, balancing academics and student needs, and what you'd mentioned before in that question, which is any sort of staffing shortages and teacher burnout. There's so much going on that we're all trying to do this while keeping the student needs at the forefront. But there's a lot of competing pressures.
Yeah, yeah, I think, special education teachers are what I call champions of progress because
100%.
they're really on the front lines of this work. And, sometimes their efforts aren't recognized, but you and I both know that if you're going to have kids with special needs, special education, teachers do God's work, my friend. So I'm
Oh, they
wondering,
absolutely do.
I wonder your message to special education teachers who may be pouring themselves into their work but don't always see that their work is valued. What would be your message about the importance of the work that they do, my friend?
Oh, their work is critical. We couldn't do our students wouldn't be where they are without special education teachers. They are some days I feel like they're you said superheroes, some days I feel like they're superhuman because they
Mm-hmm.
are in the classroom teaching, providing services, and then they connect with the students, they talk to the parents, they're drafting IEPs. I mean, like the amount of work that they do and that they do it on a daily basis is, like you said, it is not recognized. And I don't, and I think part of the thing is that people who don't work in special education don't really understand the what goes into special education, right? And so a lot of the times it goes by just unknown or without recognition because it happens most of the time so seamlessly. And they're really miracle workers most of the time.
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely. And we have to pay them more money, but that's
I agree,
that's another soapbox conversation that we could
100%.
another day. But I've got two questions left for you, and the first of those two questions is this, Diana. If I made you the secretary of the Department of Education for 1 week, my friend, and I said you have three magic wishes to change the way that we educate students with disabilities or with special needs, my friend, what would you do on the federal level to improve the quality of education?
Well, I don't know if this first one would improve the quality, but I would do it anyway, which is that I would fully fund IDEA.
I
With
figured you
all,
might have said that.
I don't know how much it would change it, but it would at least relieve some of the pressure. So we fully fund that. Um, the second thing, I would give universal access to inclusive early interventions. So, because it is such an important thing to do, you see such a difference the earlier kids get access to early interventions, and it makes an incredible difference. And then I would do, and this is going to be a big one. I think this might get banned if I say this, so we have to be careful. I won't use DEI when I say it, but mandated anti-bias training, cultural responsiveness, because it is so important, and I would do that in the credentialing programs as well. Like it's so important for the way our teachers teach, all teachers, in addition to special education teachers, in addition to special education programs. It is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, as you look at your life and your legacy, if I told you at the end of your career I was going to throw you a lifetime achievement party, and I asked those that knew you best in the field and in your personal life to come up with a toast about your life's work, my friend, what do you think you would want them to say about your life and your legacy in this field, my friend?
Um, so I want to be remembered as um, someone who helped families feel seen and supported, and as a leader who challenged systems to do better, especially for those most often left out. And I think my legacy is about changing what's possible for students and individuals with disabilities by shifting mindsets, policies, and hearts.
Yeah, and just one follow-up to that, too, because you sparked one follow-up, my friend. I know that one of your missions is to revolutionize the way that we look at special education. So what do you think will need to happen in order to realize that goal? What does revolutionizing special education mean to you?
So it means it's the work that is happening that is starting, which is it making it truly inclusive. It's some of the things that we've touched on today. It is truly including everyone with a disability. It doesn't mean picking and choosing. It doesn't mean putting conditions on it. It doesn't mean no one should ever have to prove themselves. It is a truly inclusive educational system for everyone. And that is what my vision is.
Well, my friend, it's a never-ending conversation, isn't it?
It is.
Absolutely. And finally, Diana, tell me if people want to get connected with you or Disability Ed Pros, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
So they can find me on my website, which is disabilityedpros.com. They can find me on Instagram, same thing, DisabilityEdPros. And then I have a YouTube channel, which is Disability Ed Pros.
Fabulous, my friend. I have to tell you, I think you're doing transformational work, my friend, in the field of special education and giving a voice to students with disabilities. As a lifelong student with a disability, my friend, I want to thank you for your efforts in the space and for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for your time as well.